Let's take out your maps. Those of you not turn your maps, please get it out, put the phone away. Or get a phone. The little addiction machines. Feel your pain. She must be waiting for the bell. And they're not doing the bells because they make up ACT. Hey, how was your ACT? I got good news for all of you. We were going to have a normal day at school, but I wanted to keep the magic going. Let's do another standardized test. Come on, people. Let's do it. Who's with me? Let's get them. Take out your map. Are there any questions? Make sure your name, rank, and serial number are on there. Kurtz gets right. Moscow. Kurtz is right here. Leningrad was here. Stalingrad here. Heliogland is here. Okay, it's just a standoff. Yes. I didn't know my rank or serial number. Huh? Rank or serial number? We have ways of making it possible. We have ways. All right, turn up your maps then. People like you. That's why we can't ever keep good things around here. Hey, by the way, who used crayon? Who used crayon? Did you?
Actually, oh no, not on this one.
Crayons are. Maps, turn them in. Those of you who don't have them, turn them in. Let's go, chop, chop. We're burning daylight, people. Look at the daylight. Okay, take out that sheet I gave you. Now, it won't be perfect on this. These are the basic elements of what we're doing. This is partially the discipline myself. Those with asterisks on there, you have to, did I grab them all? Asterisks, you have to get that from your book you're reading at chapter 25. Most everything else I'll cover in class. So I will do this, so I'll help you fill this out. There'll be a few things today, not everything will fit, so you might want your notes out too, but I'll try to do that. And yes, I left it small because you are young, and I would argue relatively spry. Relatively, I mean, not like when I was a youth. I define spryness. I can hop, jump. Drew, what are you looking for?
The sheet of paper.
The sheet I just handed out, and then.
I did not give it.
Grab one, right?
Oh, don't grab it.
No, you didn't. Well, I grabbed it myself.
All right, here we go. We got the fascism. What is the organizing principle of fascism? Anti-what philosophy and form of government? Socialism and communism. And yes, yeah. Now you go. There should be a sheet out there. Grab a sheet of paper, 1 to 24. And so we got corporate state. Oh, who? And what do they call that? The leader principle, or what was that? Where they tried to really push the leader on everybody was what? Well, it is totalitarianism, but also, yeah, the leader principle or cult of the leader. Yep, the leader is never wrong. And yes. Yeah, we got to what now? Yeah, so we're just finishing totalitarianism, right?
No, we just started Germany.
Oh, we just started Germany. So we got, I showed you the fascist nuns. Yep, I talked. We got here secret police propaganda.
Big Germany.
Germany. Let's do it then. So fascism, this rabidly anti-communist nationalist. Well, how do they feel about civil rights or equal rights? No. Weak. Liberal ideas made you weak. And it's also very, what?
Masculine.
Manly. And you remember the mass will altogether, but manly, men.
the cult of domesticity is really a major part about this, even though they didn't say it that way. They would say the traditional role of women, which the traditional role of women was kind of basically created out of the Industrial Revolution. So Germany after the war, there was a myth in Germany that Germany, yeah, they won the war. They never really lost. Did we get this yesterday or Monday? This probably did not get you already have it. They didn't lose. And you can see the soldiers marching home. They didn't lose. And something then lost them the war. And this really fueled the disillusionment of the veterans who were thinking, what did we fight this for? What was this sacrifice? And instead of we were misled by our rulers, it was we could have won this war. We weren't strong enough. Similar thing in Italy, and they won. And right after the war was also a civil war. The army had went home. Remember, the Treaty of Versailles only said 100,000 men. And there were right-wing attempts called the APUSH to overthrow the government, replace it with a dictatorship. Socialist rebellions. In fact, Munich broke away with Bavaria, created the People's Republic of Bavaria. So these former veterans, many of them got involved in the street fighting. There were no jobs. They didn't know what to do. They're disillusioned, but they had their weapons. They never gave those up. And since they were not part of the permanent army, they were independent or free corps. And the free corps are this independent militia. So these are veterans of World War I fighting in the streets of Berlin, Munich, and Hamburg here. They had their helmets, they had their uniforms, they had their rifles. And they're kind of encouraged by the small army because they had nobody else. And so they shifted back and forth. These are veterans fighting in the street. And they couldn't use the Maltese cross. You see it here on a captured British tank, here on a captured French tank. That is the symbol of German army. They couldn't use this cross because the cross for the German army had been banned by the Treaty of Versailles. There were Allied troops occupying along the Rhine River, so they used other crosses, like the Stone Cross, Horn Cross, or just a very stark cross to represent the Free Corps. They still want to act like they're part of the German army. So it's important to think about crosses. There's all kinds of crosses they could have used. You might have seen one of the crosses that the Free Corps used. Just a simple cross. This was very much associated with the Orthodox faith, called the swastika. Very much associated, it was just another cross. It had no other meaning than it wasn't the Maltese cross. Well, in Hindu, but they wouldn't know care about that. Yeah. They related it to the Orthodox faith, which is mostly here. That was used sometime for their cross. So they just used a cross. And that is why the National Socialists adopted that cross to appeal to veterans. That is purely why. It had no other meaning. In fact, they weren't Orthodox Christians, so that meant nothing to them. It was just a cross to identify. So you want to know where the swastika came from? It just happened. We see this a lot in history. That kind of weird coincidence of this, or for example, what was the name of the salute that the fascists adopted? Yeah, the Bellamy salute. The Bellamy salute. And who invented the Bellamy salute? The same guy who wrote what? The Pledge of Allegiance. So with that, the German government then, I got to mention this really quick, was the Weimar Republic. And the Weimar Republic, it created a constitutional monarchy, but they had to pay those reparations. And so this is the new Weimar Republic. Weimar is right about there. Really nice town. It wasn't completely destroyed in World War II, so it has a lot of at least the real actual buildings, not like Munich where they remade it. And by the way, Berlin became a symbol of all kinds of different cultures and music, and people came there. People like the Nazis said they were decadent and also unicycles. But I don't know why I put that up there. I just thought that's funny, unicycling in front of the Brandenburg Gate. They needed hard money to pay back their reparations, hard money backed by gold. That's what France wanted. And so they had to export goods, get gold back in return, and then tax those companies. That's what they had to do. So they basically had gold marks, which is their currency back then, and Reichsmarks. Reichsmarks were paper money. This weird dual system, and all the gold marks went overseas. But they had all kinds of financial issues, financial mismanagement, lots of problems, and those reparations. And in 1923, they quit paying the reparations. And France, by the Treaty of Versailles, they were allowed to do this, sent troops into the Rhineland. Here is a German civilian and a French soldier in Cologne, right here. And the Ruhr is the most industrialized region of Germany, and French troops occupied it. And German workers responded with a strike. We're not going to go to work. We're not going to work. Do hard, dangerous work, so our money goes to France. That's the way they looked at it. France wanted their reparations. That's why the Treaty of Versailles, considering how badly France was destroyed, that was their point of view. So here are striking Germans in Cologne. Here are French soldiers entering the Rhineland, French soldier on German iron. And here is a worker, 9, I won't work for the French. But the problem is, how do you make your reparation payments, or for that matter, back up your money if you can't collect taxes? And that's going to lead to something called hyperinflation. Hyperinflation has happened a few places. In your lifetime, it happened, for example, in Uganda. It happened in Venezuela had it, and Argentina right now is having it. Not as bad as Germany then. Now, hyperinflation cannot happen if the country has a sound central bank, collects their taxes, and pays back their bonds. Yes. Yeah, a trillion in their currency. Same thing happened here. You know, Americans would go to Berlin during this, and a dollar could buy you anything. And you can imagine how resentful the people who lived there would be, for good reason. So what happened was this, but you're right about Uganda, poor Uganda. And they had no tax revenues. So all of a sudden there's no workers coming in, and so their entire tax system broke down. Now the taxes aren't necessarily there. The taxes aren't necessarily there to bring money in. It's there to show the value of your currency. And it wasn't valuable. So they had no choice but to just simply inflate their currency, print money. But now it's not backed by taxes. And if it's not backed by taxes, that means they can't pay back their bonds. And if they can't pay back their bonds, nobody trusts them. Nobody trusts them. And so they can't get gold. Their paper currency fell apart. And that led to inflation beginning. You can see the big growth of inflation. This is the number of German marks to buy a dollar. It's just an exchange rate. Don't read too much into it. You know, they adopt the cost here. But when hyperinflation began, it was about 100 marks to buy a dollar. And then look at it. Went up to over $1 billion. Meaning money became worthless there. And expectations of inflation made it worse. If you think prices are going to go up today, or sorry, if you think prices are going to go up tomorrow, you buy that product today. And so you have all this money chasing few products, rising the price even more. Now, obviously, it wasn't even near hyperinflation. It was relative. It was moderate inflation we had in 2021, 2022. But that was people had money chasing few products. And so then it became comical. Here are kids making a kite out of worthless German currency, because by the end of the summer, prices were going up. Well, first during the summer, it's 10, 20, 30% a day. By the end of the summer, it was 100 to 200% a day. By fall, 1,000% a day. Meaning, money you had in the morning was worthless by evening. That meant you have to spend it now, but everyone else is too. And so that just kept rising the prices, just cycling. Opposite of debt deflation. So here's a couple of things. I like this one. German marks to buy an ounce of gold. You know, 372,000. Got a little bit of inflation. How much is that? Yeah. Yeah. Billion. Trillion.
1,000 marks, and then tomorrow it's just
Toilet paper. That was the joke. In fact, they started just printing money on paper so thin, it was basically like toilet paper. And that's why there's not a lot of these 50 million mark notes left, because it just dissolved. I have a 20,000 mark note. And so here are a couple, there's a 5 billion mark note. It costs, how much is this to buy a loaf of bread? Just 200 billion marks, not too bad. And a 2 million mark note stamp. And so here are people, baskets of money to buy a loaf of bread. Here's someone getting their paycheck in the morning and it's worthless at night. Their money, it's incomprehensible. Basically, the whole economic system collapsed. And more comical pictures, you know, paper in their wall and stacking the money, you know, ha ha ha. But middle class people were really hurt by this. Middle class people, they might have a little bit of savings. What's your savings account worth? Yeah, this kind of inflation. It's just gone. If you're on your paycheck in the morning, it's worthless at night. If you're on a fixed income, it's worthless. And so, I'm glad it's getting better. Here's a picture of Gutenberg, a comic of him, the inventor of the printing press in German, and you're printing all the money going, you know, like that acting. And so this has actually been burning billions of marks after they changed currencies to what's called the Reutemark. And during this insecurity, a new political party, tiny, just a few thousand members in Munich, tried to overthrow the government. And it was led by a former soldier and Austrian immigrant. You might have heard of him. Oh, before I get to that. So to this day, Germany obsesses about hyperinflation. And they incorrectly blame it on debt, government debt. That's not what did it. It was the inability to collect taxes. My letter is here. Thank you. Yeah. And so they just obsess about inflation today. And one thing I have to say, this did not bring Hitler into power, but it freaked him out about any financial issues afterwards. So Hitler, the German veteran, here is another shot of him. AH, if you're not sure. What? The little mustache, why did they wear them? Yeah, the gas mask, and that symbolized veteran, just like the swastika, appealed to former members of the Free Corps to join the Nazis. He originally was a spy. He was recruited by the German secret police to spy on the German Workers' Party, and that's actually his card for the German Deutsche Arbeiter Party. The Deutsche Arbeiter Party would become the National Socialist, or the NDSAP, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He liked it so much he stayed and quit becoming a spy and would become, well, second in command, but he had such a gift for speaking, he would eventually take over. Yeah. He actually did this in 1920, but going to 1923. Well, they called themselves a National Socialist. Don't think they're mortal enemy socialists. But think about socialism as, like, socialists would say all workers together as one class. Here, all Germans together. That was their idea of socialism. But it's not socialist. So National Socialistic would be on their ballots. And as an insult, you take two letters here, the ZI, you get Nazi. So that was meant to originally be an insult, mocking them, you're a Nazi. They didn't like it. That's not something they really called themselves, Nazis. They called themselves National Socialists. And so they decided, there are a couple, you can see the Free Corps right there, and those are members of the National Socialist German Workers' Party marching in Munich. When they're just a tiny little party, basically all they did is they roughed up and ambushed socialists. That's what they did. But in 1923, during the height of inflation, they did the beer hall putsch, a coup. They thought they could overthrow the government. What their thought was, they'll overthrow the government in Munich, and it will spread like wildfire all across Europe, all across Germany, and the Berlin government will fall. Hardly anybody even knew who they were outside of Munich. They were that small. So here are some of them coming out of one of the beer halls. They met in a beer hall. They would meet there and recruit people in beer halls. Here you can see them in their uniforms. They had their old uniforms. And there would be a confrontation between the tiny German army and the Nazis. And I just had to put a picture of Hitler in lederhosen. There's a lot of picture of him in the traditional Munich clothing, and all of them are funny and creepy at the same time. I should add, almost forgot. Here's Hitler in the Hofbrauhaus, which is a beer hall in Munich. Now it's more of a tourist place, but it's in the upstairs here where they would meet people, upstairs meeting hall where there's still fascist symbols on there right now. And if you're lucky, you can get up there. Sometimes they'll let people go up there. I asked. There's just a couple not a swastika, but other symbolism of the fascists. And the beer hall they actually started in for this putsch was destroyed in World War II, so it's gone. So it was brutally put down. We're not going to worry about Ludendorff. It failed miserably. Here is outside the Opera House, the disruption after it. Here are, see the swastikas. They're attempted to cool miserable failure. And that should have been it for the Nazis. I mean, they committed treason. They should have been over. He actually could have been executed under the Weimar Constitution. But Hitler had a sympathetic judge when he was tried. And Hitler turned the trial into a forum where he said, I am a victim of fate. I fought for this country, and we were forced to sign this Treaty of Versailles, and that's why we're weak. That's why we have hyperinflation. And he turned it into a political forum, and that's how Hitler became nationally known. He'd spent just a little bit over a year in prison. I wrote this down. I kept forgetting Landesberg. You don't have to write that down, but I was bugging me, so I typed it down so I wouldn't forget. And in it, that's him in prison, yes, in lederhosen. And they did some airbrushing and painted, so it makes him look even kind of like this. It's kind of a funny picture. But he had 2 cells, he had furniture brought in, he had his personal secretary, Rudolf Hess, dictate his messages and everything else. He got the money from what kind of people started to like the National Socialists? Who?
Workers?
Few. Who? Yeah, the big businesses. Big business liked Hitler. Why? Anti-union, anti-socialist. He got his money from wealthy Germans. There's some workers, veterans, disillusioned people, but the big thing were the money started going, oh, just like the people who supported Mussolini. And in there, he wrote his memoir, dictated to Rudolf Hess, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. And it reads like somebody walking around a room ranting. It makes no sense. It's really hard to read. I've read it, and it was awful. Not only for the toxic ideology, but just awful. Even though I do have to say, he understood propaganda. He understood it. He had a knack. Say what you want people to believe and repeat it over and over and over again. He also said one more thing. If you're going to lie, what kind of lie should you do? I have no quote up there from Mein Kampf. The great masses of people will more easily fall victims to a big lie than a small lie. Because people are so, if you hear something that's so obviously untrue, it's like, oh, it must be true. They never would say something that much of a lie. And it gets out there, its tentacles stick in. Even if people know it's not true, it sticks. So, you read this though, and most of it's about the evils of socialism and the evils of the forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. And yes, underlying the whole thing is anti-Jew propaganda. But he'll be ranting about the Versailles and then how Jews made us sign this, and then all of a sudden there are 10 pages on syphilis, and you're going, what? How did we get here? It doesn't make sense. Must have been something about his life in the army, but Nazi ideology then. That's him after, and he decided to enter the political movement. Use the weaknesses that are inherent in every liberal democracy, aka freedom of speech, electing government officials, use those weaknesses to destroy the Constitution of Germany. Could those weaknesses be used in other countries that have constitutions? No, nothing to see here. Move on. Of course, every one. So, here are the main elements. Now, think about fascism, but kind of mold it in with this idea. Number one, the evils of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was forced upon us. We lost land, we lost our army, we lost our colonies, and those reparations. France forced it. How did we pay that? Because we won the war. Remember that myth. Well, they decided there was an enemy within. We had France and the Allies outside, but the enemy within. And who's the enemy within? They stabbed. Oh, here's another one. Working for others. We're going to cut out of this straitjacket. The enemy within stabbed us in the back. Or as we say in German, anyone want to try this in German? Yeah. Durchstaffelkinder. If you're German, you got to say it like that. Speak to any German. That's not the time. They can't help it. It's in their blood. And I have German relatives, but one visited here, remember? But it means a stab in the back. Very, very subtle here, right? I can't even identify this. Same deal. You see that? Yeah. And these are businessmen, but they represent bankers. That's the key thing. Or here's the biggie. That represents who? Red, communists and socialists stabbed us in the back. And there's an element there. Yes, they didn't stab in the back, but there's an element of truth. Socialists were opposed to the war. It was socialists that led the first government of the Weimar Republic, called Democratic Socialists, Moderate Socialists. And so the stab in our back. And this is corrosive because it says there's somebody in our country. They're not just against us, or they're not just, we don't just have a political disagreement with them. They're against Germany. They're undermining our country, meaning they're what? Traitors. We have a traitor within. Remember totalitarianism. Act like total war and then wipe out dissent because it's helping the enemy. So number two, who did it? I'm sorry this got cut off. I have no idea why that's up there. But scapegoat. Find someone to demonize. Find someone. So, the other. Somebody who's not like us. And so this is xenophobic. Fear of the outsider. Now in this context, who's not really German? We're coming to there. We're coming there. But don't forget the organizing principles, anti-communism, anti-socialism. So, communists. Communists and socialists. They're our enemy. They stabbed us in the back. Also, the liberals, those who want equal rights. Hey, the Weimar Republic allowed women to vote. That made us weak. The Weimar Republic allowed other groups to come out open and say who they were, especially in places like Berlin, that became a place of refuge for example, homosexuals. That made us weak, decadent, all those kind of things. Next, businessmen, especially bankers, who got rich off the war and then would profit them. If we lost, they got rich that way with the debt afterwards. Also, Slavs. We talked about those people before, seen as inferiors, jealous of Germany, right on our border. We interbreed with them and our race is weakened. Also, anti-educated class, anti-pointy heads, those educated elite who trick us, try to get scientific reasons for things that we can't question. Those pointy heads. That's a term for educated elite. Very much used in the United States, not as much anymore. Hey, there's still a major bias against the elite. I should add one more thing I didn't put down there. Put down media. They really were angry. Berlin was a center of motion picture, of movies, of the motion picture industry in the world. So those decadent, Berlin actors and those theater and those artists. And then, of course, behind them all were the Jews. Behind everyone. The leading intellectuals in Germany, the leading scientists, Jews. The largest population of Jews in the world at this time, Poland and the Soviet Union. Also the largest Slavic countries. That can't be a coincidence. Bankers, that medieval prejudice against bankers that they're Jewish. That's why. Should add, it's really a pretty darn good thing that the Nazis were so anti-science. Really pretty good thing. The leading scientists who made the atomic bomb, many of them fled the Nazis and many of them were Jewish. And then, many of the leading socialists and communists, Jewish. So this idea that the Jewish were behind it all, and I thought this was a pretty good cartoon to symbolize it. This is actually during the war. The major enemies of Germany, Britain, United States, and the Soviet Union, and who's behind them all? A horrible caricature of a Jew. So, that's the point. The Jews were behind the communists. In fact, by 1941-42, Bolshevik became synonymous with Jewish. So when they made the order to kill all Jews in the areas that they conquered of the Soviet Union by groups called Einsatzgruppen, the order didn't say kill Jews, it said kill Bolsheviks. And everybody knew what that meant. Every politician, every teacher, every government official. And they shot millions. Next, why do they do this? We are a master race. We are a superior race, and everyone's jealous of us. And remember, I mentioned this before. This goes back to that old superiority of German culture and the creation of the German Empire back in the 1870s. This fake, sciencey, social Darwinistic idea of Aryan. And so here you have these kind of creepy artistic versions of Aryans. You know, they're just generic, blonde hair, blue eyed. And this is for the Hitler Youth. And this idealized German. I should add, they did a lot of sciencey stuff to figure out what the perfect German Aryan looked like. And so they would do things like measure forehead. The big one was measuring your bridge of your nose. They measured your eyes. They did all these things. And so they said if you let's say you didn't have blonde hair or blue eyes, they could still see if you're an Aryan. Like, for example, if you have dark hair but you have kind of greenish eyes, like Adolf Hitler, he turned out to have the exact measurements of the perfect Aryan. That's science. You can't argue with science. They only like science if it helped them politically. They saw everything as politics. Everything is political, including this. So remember, this was created way back before World War I. They just piggybacked on this. Everyone's jealous of us. And that's why they jumped on the American, this came from the United States, idea of eugenics, that they can selectively breed, and we must have purity, and we must have the proper breeding. We can't allow interbreeding, or for that matter, Germans have got to have more kids. So this was this inferior. It could be Slav, it could be Jewish, just inferior. And look how many children they have. And look at the faces, look how they draw. And this good German woman, and they're going to be outnumbered. We're going to be overwhelmed. And so they really push. Remember the cult of domesticity? This is the thing they really pushed on young women from day one. You got to start having children by the time you're ready to have children. Meaning, when? Yeah, your age. Got to start having kids. And they would do like, you'd have to go through and show your purity and go back through your parents and show how German you are. And you'd be rated on how German you are. They put these true Aryans will marry and make sure that we have true, pure blood. They didn't do that for everybody, but they did it. That is why they appealed to people in areas they conquered. So there's a lot of people who kind of look like Germans in the Netherlands, a lot in Norway, and they joined the German SS, the Standsstufe, which started as Hitler's kind of private guard, became the concentration camp guards and soldiers. So in 1945, the Reichstag, the German capital in Berlin, in April 45, the Soviets were taking it. They had to fight floor by floor, stairwell by stairwell. The hardest fighting would be on the stairwell. And the SS soldiers there, the fanatical Nazi SS soldiers that defended the Reichstag literally to the last man, everyone had to be killed. So the Soviets took it, we're from Norway. They can't go home. So they fought to the death. So, thus, just like Mussolini, we have the leader. And the leader on top, they called him Der Führer. Der Führer means leader. Mussolini was El Duce, the quasi-fascist dictator in Spain, Francisco Franco, El Supremo. I got to admit, El Supremo, actually. Stalin liked to be called the boss. But, so, yeah, like a gangster. So, we have the cult of the leader, and the big thing is the leader's never wrong. The laws don't apply to the leader. The leader can do anything and can change their story. The leader can say the communists and the fascists are going to destroy civilization and then sign a treaty with Stalin. And everybody must just accept it. And there's one more thing. The leader, he's one of his elements of fascism or authoritarian dictators. They never tell the truth. They lie all the time. Not just big lies, small lies, lie. Lie. And if anybody, let's say newspapers when the 1920s would say he's lying, he would say that's fake news and they're lying. And if you never know the truth, you never know what reality is. Who can you trust? So we just got to go in with the. All right. Yeah. Go, please. Oh, wait. What are we doing tomorrow? Short answer question. Keynesian. Trickle down evaluation. Sound good? You have 8 minutes. Yes. 3 to 4 sentences on Keynesian, 3 to 4 sentences on trickle down, 3 to 4 sentences on evaluation. And you have to give evidence. You can't just say, I like it because I think the name is fun. No. You'll have about 50. Go to lunch. Oh my goodness. Enjoy your lunch. What time's lunch in? 12:24. Right. The National Guard. Wow.
Yeah.
Ready? Sheet of paper. 1 to 24.
Did you know that currently the Namibian president, his name is Adolf Hitler?
I did not know that.
Yeah, Namibia used to be a German colony, so his parents really admired Hitler for how he took power. Didn't really know much about what he did, so he had to go on record and say he has no plans for world domination.
I didn't see that, but that's a weird too, also because of how horrific the Germans were to the people.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's what they named him. That wasn't his first name. That was his middle and last name.
Hope his first name is more
Or
culturally
something like that.
The 1 to 24. You just have to fill in with that. You have to actually write it down. And you have fun. I'll be right back.
See you tomorrow. Okay, time.
You're good? No problem, no questions?
Guess what, Mr. Partridge? I got UConn. I said UConn. I never filled out a bracket before.
Oh, you got
I
it?
got it. I did better than my dad and my brother.
Awesome. You know your stuff.
Oh yeah. No, Mr. LaRue. I told him that I